Nostalgia, you say, right? Yeah, I get it, I understand. Nostalgia takes us all back to a place. I mean, whether it's toys, cartoons, games, fashion, culture, music, the 80's era, the best era, the 90's era. I mean, whatever takes you back to that place in time, right? I mean, nostalgia puts a smile on us all. It takes us back to that happy place. Alright guys, welcome to episode 4. I'm Milo Martin, and today we're going to actually be talking about 80's and 90's music. I'm going to go everywhere. It's going to be short, but I'm still going to talk about hip-hop, alternative, soft rock, boy bands, bands from the 80's and 90's, and some house music. So let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about 80's and 90's hip-hop. The birth of it. I mean, where did it originate from? Kool Herc being, basically, he was a DJ. DJ Kool Herc being from, I believe he was from Kingston, Jamaica. But he resided in New York, DJing in actually like the late 70's and 80's, being one of the pioneers and founders of hip hop, bringing it into its full fruition in the Bronx, in New York, in the 80's. Huge scene. Took over the United States, at a large, full effect. And some other pioneers were Africa Bambaataa. Who else was some pioneers? Grandmaster Flash. And there's elements to hip hop as well. There's 5 elements. So you got basically MCing, which is an acronym. It's the letters M and the letter C. So basically it stands for Masters of Ceremony. So DJ Khaled does it very well. So basically you have to like entertain large groups. Like you got to know how to rock the mic, pretty much. That's literally knowing how to entertain crowds, keeping the flow going, knowing how to make the crowd vibe, no downtime. Like, so MCing is actually not easy. There's a skill set behind it. So that's one of the elements. The other one is DJing. So clearly you got that 2-in-1 combos. A lot of DJs are their own MCs, but a lot of DJs bring an MC. With DJing, it's a huge skill in itself. I mean, you gotta know how to blend music, cut music, scratch music, transitions. So I mean, I took a dabble at DJing years and years ago, and it's a skill set. It's a skill set that takes a lot of time to acquire. The third element, no particular order, but the third element is actually breaking. So breakdancing, which is worldwide. You have different groups all over the world who compete now today. I have a cousin that actually breakdances as well. So originating from New York, I mean, it's very big in China. It's big everywhere. So you got breaking, that's a huge factor and one of the elements of hip hop today. You also got graffiti. Graffiti is huge everywhere as well. I mean, especially in New York. I mean, it's so artistic. So many places in New York where they allow you to, and they don't allow you, but it is what it is, right? I mean, you can't. It is what it is. So I mean, graffiti. It's such a lovely thing to actually see. You got murals everywhere in New York, and it's popular worldwide. Graffiti. It's not just a United States thing or a New York thing. So, and then the last element is actually beatboxing. So you still have so many beatbox competitions. People on the corners back in the 90's beatboxing against each other, but beatboxing is a huge thing. So those are basically the 5 elements of hip hop. And then I mean, there was unfortunately some great like
warning
beefs in the 90's. Like you had Ice Cube and Eazy-E, right? In the early 90's. You had Jay-Z and Nas. You had one of the biggest ones, Big and Pac. And we couldn't just go online. You had to wait for it on the radio. You heard it on the radio. It's not like we can go online and just kind of look for the track like we do now with all the modern beefs and this. Like, that's not how it worked back then. Like, it was like a whole anticipation waiting for these tracks to release. And then when you heard it, we're like, whoa, we got to hear it again. So we had to either record it on the tape or find it on the radio. Like, it was crazy. So yeah, 90s beef and diss track was definitely different than what we see now in 2020. Very, very different. So yeah, unfortunately, I had a very strict mother, and she would only let me listen to clean rap, which the only clean rap I was able to listen to was really Will Smith. So like, you know, getting jiggy with it. Like, I know a lot of his songs. Like, you know, he was a great rapper. He was a great artist back, you know, in the 90s. And even he put out a few albums in the 2000s, like Willennium. He had the Big Willie style album before that. But man, I know most of that man's tracks. So shout out to Will Smith, because my mom only let me listen to like clean rap. But you know, on the side, I know hip hop, so I used to listen to like, you know, when I wasn't at home, I had to go listen to it like with friends, you know, on the side, like some Jay-Z, some Big, some Nas. I mean, Nas is my favorite artist, so shout out to Nas, Push. So yeah. Let's go into alternative and soft rock. I mean, you had so many huge bands back in the 90s. I mean, you had like Nirvana, Foo Fighters, Hoobastank, Red Hot Chili Peppers. One of my favorites, Hoobastank, Linkin Park, Sugar Ray, Smash Mouth, Third Eye Blind. I mean, you had so many artists just that was in that scene that made, to me personally, I felt like really expanded rock. Because that was actually one of my favorite genres back in the 90s and 2000s. So, I mean, I used to listen to a lot of Sugar Ray, Hoobastank, Nickelback, Third Eye Blind, Foo Fighters a little bit. But, yeah, I actually listened to quite a bit of, like, soft alternative rock. And it was just such a huge thing. And I just love the sound of, like, you know, soft alternative rock. What was one of my favorite songs by Red Hot Chili Peppers? Scar Tissue. I really, to this day, I love that song by Red Hot Chili Peppers, Scar Tissue. Great song. Actually, a great video, too. So those were some of my favorites. You know, some of the most popular, like, you know, Nirvana. I mean, if you don't know Nirvana, I mean, I don't know. Go look up some of their music. Nirvana has great music. So, yeah. So, boy bands. One of my favorite genres was literally the 90s boy band era. I mean, you had NSYNC, my favorite group. You had Backstreet Boys. I mean, they were always head-to-head, toe-to-toe. You had other groups like 98 Degrees, Old Town, New Kids on the Block, Hanson. Right? I mean, you had so many groups like back in the 90s. And then you had like, you know, like your Boys to Men. You had Jodeci. You had New Edition. You had, you know, your groups like B2K. So, you know, there was a lot of boy bands, and there still are. But those boy bands back in the 90s, I mean, man, one of my first CDs actually was a single CD. It was, even though my favorite band was NSYNC, it was Backstreet Boys. It was a purple CD. I don't remember, but it was just one single song on there. You had the two versions. I think it was like the instrumental. This was back when CDs first came out, when they dropped like the single one, like the radio mix and the clean mix and not the clean mix, the radio mix, and then like the unedited mix. But the boy bands didn't have it, so I think it was like an instrumental. It was basically one single on there. It was a purple CD. I just don't remember what it was, but I remember it was by Backstreet Boys. I actually still have most of NSYNC's first CDs that came out. I have like two huge albums of CDs that I still have and never got rid of. But yeah, I mean, NSYNC was my favorite band. I mean, Tearing Up My Heart, Bye Bye Bye. I mean, you know what? Until this day, Justin Timberlake is actually still one of my favorite artists. So shout out to Justin Timberlake, because I've been rocking with him since the 90s. So I'm definitely a true fan of Justin Timberlake. But yeah, I mean, then you had New Edition, which had Bobby Brown. They actually did. Well, he did the 80s, the 80s soundtrack of Ghostbusters 2. So he had a few singles on there as well, Bobby Brown. So shout out to Bobby Brown, New Edition. B2K, I was a huge fan of B2K, especially Omarion. Shout out to Omarion. You had Boyz II Men, you had Jodeci. I mean, they were all great bands. All of them were great bands. Hanson, Hanson with their I mean, I've only known them for the one single, which was that Bop. So that song was fire. But other than that, I don't remember really any other songs they did. But I mean, they were, you know, they're still one of the best bands back in the 90s. And then you have one of my favorite, which is 90s house music, which is basically like a mixture of like Chicago house style music, kind of like formed in the 80s, in the 90s. It gained popularity in the 90s, so alongside with Chicago house music, I mean, it exploded, especially here in the United States and in the UK as well. You have bands like, not bands, but you have, you know, excuse me, you have artists such as like, you know, Little Louis Vega, Armin van Helden, Sandy B, Hadaway. So I mean, there's a lot of great house music. I mean, I remember going to New York in the 90s. You know, my family's from New York, so I was actually born in Miami, but family's from New York, so we always used to go there. I mean, and man, I grew a deep love for house music. I mean, between 90s house music, 80s and 90s hip hop, and soft alternative rock, I would feel like those are my top 3 genres in no particular order. But as far as music goes, those would have to be my top three genres. I mean, even today, I still listen to like a lot of house. Now, I mean, it's evolved so much. You have EDM, you have dubstep. I mean, but I still listen to, you know, house music today. I love hip hop. More old school hip hop. The new school, you know, it has to dawn on me. You know, some of these artists are very similar and they sound the same. So newer artists, they really have to grasp my attention for me to actually listen to the music. And as far as soft and alternative rock, I mean, I have a playlist on Spotify. I just go and just listen to, you know, my Red Hot Chili Peppers or Smash Mouth or Sugar Ray. So I do have a playlist. So yeah, I mean, those are like, you know, some of like the 80s and 90s music. I mean, what were some of your guys' favorites? Like band, songs, music, or even genre? Like, I know I didn't cover, there's so many genres of music. I didn't cover a lot. I didn't cover country. There's quite a few genres that I didn't cover because I'm not familiar with them, but I would love to bring people on and, you know, sit here and talk about that with all of you guys. So, yeah, what was some of your guys' favorite, like, you know, music, genres, back in the 80s or 90s that took you back to that place, like, you know, like, man, life was easy. So, yeah, I mean, this is all I have today for episode 4 on your 80s and 90s music. Thank you for tuning in. Catch me on episode 5. It's going to be a good topic, I'm not going to say, but check it out, episode 5. I know I took a drastic turn from like toys, comics, and stuff like that, but this is, you know, nostalgia. So, and I wanted to kind of go left field and talk about music. As some of you know, I did own a record label at one point in time. So yeah, music is like one of my first loves. So I definitely love music. But anyway, stay tuned for episode 5. I'm going to be talking about something different, so another nostalgic topic, but something very different as well. And if you can, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below. And let me know what you think. Leave your comments, thoughts, opinions, you know, and give this video a thumbs up. So I'm gonna catch you guys later.